From what are we blinded? And what dire need is Israel facing in such a time as this? In the coming months, Iran will have their nuclear weapons. Stop and think for a moment if Ahmadinejad would be true to his words and use his nuclear warheads as he promised to annihilate Israel? But does Iran need to bomb the Jewish state in order to destroy Israel? Or is there a hidden plan that could bring an equal destruction? One we could not even begin to fathom, even if Iran will never use their weapons, which is what everyone hopes. Just the fact that they are in their possession will change the course of history. Once Iran has her nuclear weapons, the balance of forces in the Middle East will change entirely. Within days, a blanket of fear will be spread over the neighboring Arab countries. Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and countries of the Persian Gulf will not have a choice but to cut off any and all alliances with the US. They will be forced to obey every command coming from the oppressive dictatorship of Iran. Everyone will know now who is calling the shots. The fear-paralyzed Islamic Middle East will now be sucked into becoming puppet nations of Iran. This has already transpired to Syria, Lebanon, and now even Turkey. It's actually the Iranian nuclear scare over the Arab nations that would be the greatest threat to Israel.
Welcome, President Mubarak.
The Middle East will never be the same again. Any political decision that would not serve the complete interest of the Iranian government would be considered as a traitor to the new boss in the neighborhood. Iran will become the leader of the Arab world, the renewed Persian Empire. Now that the entire oil of the Middle East is controlled by Iran, America and Europe will be forced to do anything to appease Iran. When Iran threatened, at the time which I will decide Europe will freeze in the winter, it was just a very small preview of the fear and panic that will terrorize all the nations of the world. Fears of energy crisis, fears of financial collapse, and of course, the fear of national security is what will enslave the leaders of every nation to Iran's demands. Will they choose the interest of Israel above their own countries? Do you think they will listen to the cries of the small Jewish state, or they will choose to listen to the people they actually represent? Who would rather choose the destiny of Israel when the destiny of their own country is at stake? When they are subject to these words? No matter how much a president may hold Israel in the highest regard, he still won't have a choice. Israel will be a small price to pay for any leader of the world. So who will be there? The UN?
Do you seek the destruction of Israel, or don't you seek the destruction of Israel?
I think I deserve an answer, sir. This is the United Nations.
Next question, please.
This is the United Nations, and I think, sir, I deserve an answer. An answer.
You're going to the UN. You're going to a house of lies about Israel. You're going to a house of darkness. And what you have to remember are two things: who you represent and what you represent. You represent the Jewish people, and you must speak the truth. And remember that in the largest hall, fully dark, if you light one candle, it dispels the darkness.
Have we not also come into the kingdom, just like Queen Esther, for such a time as this, to boldly petition before his throne of grace to save his people, Israel?
there are people that I hope today will also be like her, who say no. Today I'm going to stand with the Jewish people. I've received my Messiah through them, the apostles, the New Testament, and through their future, the world has any future at all, Emmanuel. But it needs not theology, not just Bible study. It needs us to do to Israel what the Lord did for us. He became us. The Son of God became the Son of Man, and we have to become the Jewish people. Their people should be our people, and their God is already our God through Jesus.
I want you to hold, each of you, a candle for truth. I want you to be the ambassadors of truth.
I want to create a center. I want to say to the people, do you really want to know what it is that Israel needs? She needs a brother. Not a theologian, not a preacher. She needs a brother. Can you understand? This nation bleeds from 1,000 wounds.
Especially you know, this man was nearly in rags. He tried to help others that had been exploded by a suicide terrorist. And as he was trying to minister, he had left his car even running. Another terrorist came to all the people that had surrounded the victims of the first terrorist attack and blew himself up on him. It's a miracle to see him stand here.
I had now an Israeli in my meeting in Rotterdam, and he whispered in my ear just before I spoke, "Ata Yerushalmi? Are you a Jerusalemite?" After I spoke, I said to him, "What are you doing here?" He says, "I've nothing to go back to. My parents sat in the bus in Jaffa that was attacked by a terrorist, and they were sitting together, dead. I've no brother, no sister, no wife. I fought in Hamas, and the whole world criticizes us. So I left everything." I looked at him. I thought, God, this is just one Israeli.
The situation in Israel is very, very hard, very hard to live. But we have you to support us. We have you to give us love, to give us hope in whatever you can. Like young villain.
What I felt is Israel is bleeding from so many. This is just one. I could repeat it 100,000 times over. People have lost their grandparents in the Auschwitz, lost their sons in the wars of Israel, or lost their parents in terrorist attacks. And what does the world do? Criticize, criticize, criticize. I says, when are we going to rise up as real brothers and say, Israel needs you to come with a bleeding heart and say, I'll do anything for you. Tell me how I can help you.
ואהבת לרעך כמוך. Love your friend as you love yourself. This is the whole Torah.
That's what the center will do. To tell the millions of believers to be a force for Israel, when America will be the last nation that will fall away from supporting Israel.
Ever since Abraham, the heart of every Jew has reached and fallen, reached and fallen. 2,000 years, the jealousy of the nations have made them pay the price in blood and broken dreams. Should not we be the ones to rekindle their hope, to rekindle the beacons of Jerusalem? Should we leave the world to decide their fate? Will we linger any longer? Will we let them stand alone again and again? If not us, then who?
there? Abba! You promised me you'll never go. Abba?
Nations, you have forgotten me. You have forgotten my people, so forgotten me. Have you been there for her, my beloved Jerusalem, the apple of my eye? I have loved her in everlasting love. Everlasting, never-ending love. Now, we all know that the time is near where north, south, east, and west will turn their backs against God and His people.
And remember that in the largest hall, fully dark, if you light one candle, it dispels the darkness.
Hope is rekindled, and we will shine. Shouldn't our story have been more than we have become? Wasn't our story written before time was time, from when our eyes were still closed and our hearts were still open? In the place where the apple of His eye was looking at us, and it's still looking at us, Jerusalem, we are meant to worship with you. In one prayer, we'll look into the heavens and promise you, Judah, that for Zion's sake, we will no longer be at rest. And for Jerusalem's sake, we will never stay silent again. Look into the eyes of the young generation in Israel, the apple of His eye. But they are still waiting. For 2,000 years, we lay silent, but no more. Israel, we will be with you till the very end. If this movie has touched your heart and even moved you to tears, remember Israel's tears. Their tears are not evoked by a film, but rather tears where survival or surrender is their only option. The extreme fanaticism of Israel's enemies and Iran's end-time strategy leaves us no more time to hesitate. To them, Israel's destruction is a push of a button away. You can be a deciding factor. The Christian Agency for Israel needs you to gather all the millions of Christians worldwide needed to counteract the many enemies of Israel. Go to our website and learn how you can become active ambassadors for Israel. When the day will come when Israel will be in dire need, she will find herself in the arms of her true friends. Go to IsraelMyBeloved.com and make your mark.